So now we're going to get into our next speaker, Zsolt Ptah. And Zsolt is also new to Portal To Ascension, just like 70 to 80% of everybody you can experience today. Today, we had a few people that have been here before, maybe half the speakers. Tomorrow, it's almost everybody's almost new, or they've been on Portal To Ascension just one time. And Zsolt also, around the same time, AJ and Tom came on about 2 to 3 months ago, connected with us. And we have done a couple of interviews, launched on Portal To Ascension, deep dives on Egyptian anomalies, Tesla connection, ancient energy, weapons, and how that connects to consciousness, believe it or not. But it's just such full circle awareness when it comes to ancient civilizations, including Egypt and India and other places in the world, and the frequency technology, and then how that connects to Tesla's awareness, and how that connects to the next level of what we're doing on this planet, using this technology for good, using this technology for bad and destruction. And we've actually seen both of them happen, not only in modern times, but throughout history. And Zsolt, I believe today, is going to be doing that presentation in which he's going to show that. So a little bit about Zsolt. He has always felt called to this planet at this time for a unique purpose. What he hopes to see more of in the world is kindness, compassion, and unity. But how do we create that in a community that is so divided? In a world that is so divided, he believes it begins by asking the right questions and turning inwards. True change starts within and radiates outward, echoing the principle, be the change you wish to see in the world. Since 2015, Zsolt has been driven to explore the fall of ancient civilizations and decode hidden truths within their sacred sites. Through visual storytelling, he aims to connect the dots between ancient cataclysms and our modern collective awakening. Hey, brother, good to see you.
Hey, what's up, my brother? Great seeing you again. Good to connect with you. It's an honor.
Good to be with you too, man. How you doing?
I'm doing well, thank you. Thanks for that really awesome introduction, man.
Definitely, brother. You're always radiating, man. I feel that every time I see you. So thank you for being here. I'm excited. And I think, are you doing the presentation that we did together just recently? All right.
Yeah, that's what I say. It was a perfect introduction right into the material, So I'm looking
perfect, brother. Okay, let's do it. You want to screen share?
Yeah.
Now we can do a quick test of the audio if you want, but it should work.
Okay.
Okay, it's coming up.
All right, so you see my screen?
Uh-huh.
Let me just quickly go to the first video.
All right, everybody, strap on your seatbelts. This is a good one.
I had this in.
Yeah, we're good. Uh-huh.
Awesome.
Okay, brilliant. Just go to the beginning and make sure you make it full screen. Yep, there we go.
All right.
Okay.
All right, so here we go. So I just wanted to take a moment before I get started to acknowledge all the listeners currently on right now. Thank you for tuning in and listening. And also the listeners that's going to be tuning into the recording. So I just wish to acknowledge everybody on right now. Thank you so much. And thank you for allowing me to share. Really appreciate it. All right, so this is... I also want to, so I'm going to start by acknowledging Nikola Tesla, because the bulk of his work, it's on this presentation. So I want to acknowledge him for his incredible achievements and his noble vision of a free energy planet and a future for humanity, for all of us, as well as acknowledge all of those inventors that came after him and came before him who had the same vision as well. So I have quite a lot of material to cover, like I said before. So I'm just going to start with a brief introduction of my hypothesis. Okay, so Tesla's exploration of terrestrial resonance stands as a pivotal discovery for us today, laying the groundwork for ether-based technologies and free energy systems through meticulous observation and examination of historical and contemporary evidence. It becomes clear to me that electrical conductivity from primordial universal current in the form of lightning, plasma, or electricity identifies as the fundamental power source and phenomena behind many ancient cataclysmic events. These same electric current phenomena are also being harnessed in modern times, revealing and pointing out the misuse of weaponized free energy technologies. A perfect example of the specific type has led me to Tesla's most controversial invention, a machine which he intended to make war obsolete over 100 years ago. After its public knowledge, falling into the wrong hands and becoming a weaponized system. Now, my aim here today is to demystify the ancient past by connecting and corresponding this evidence to the crimes being committed against humanity in current day and expose them for what they truly are, a series of electric events cloaked by highly sophisticated yet suspect energy technologies strategically engineered for weather warfare application. Okay, so beginning in 2018, 2019, I started to notice how these very odd wildfires were occurring in California more and more frequently. So I started to look into them and investigate them more closely, which then led me to create the chapter series that's on my website called Expedition Zero Point, which I completed last December. So tonight, along with slides, I will be sharing a total of 7 video clips. All of them, except for the last slide, will be just under 3 minutes, 2 minutes. And the final slide, which will be about 8-minute compilation, which is based on the 3rd chapter of the Expedition film series, which ties together my hypothesis for this presentation. So when I showed my friend Trisha the previous draft, she reminded me of one key element I left out, which now provides the structure to this entire story, also changing the entire beginning section to the way it is now, the way I'm presenting it to you guys. And as it turned out, I had the perfect image to start off with. So together with my friend Trisha, we attended the Conscious Life Expo back in February of 24 to see keynote speaker Sasha Stone. And I happen to take this picture of him holding up the Vajra Dorje, the key element I initially left out. So thank you so much, Trisha, for your valuable suggestions and reminding me to add in the Vajra. Very important. Okay, so what is the Vajra? It's a Sanskrit word in Tibetan, and it is called a dorje. It is related to the word diamond and appears to be similar to the thunderbolt weapon carried by the Vedic god Indra and the Olympian Zeus. So let's talk a little bit about the Mahabharata, one of the 2 major Sanskrit epics of ancient India, revered as Smriti texts in Hinduism, the other being the Ramayana. So it narrates the events and aftermaths of the Kurukshetra War, the war of succession involving the Kauravas and the Pandavas, and the struggle for sovereignty between these 2 groups of princely cousins. So the Hindu story of Indra's personal thunderbolt, which was used to create bolts of lightning, the Vajra, which is one of the many astras or supernatural or celestial weapons, aka ether technologies he possessed, giving this one to his son Arjuna. Employ this weapon now, and not a single soldier of opposing army will be left alive. So it hit them like lightning and split their chests open. So in the context of the Mahabharata, the Battle of Illusions, or Maya, refers to the battles where warriors use magic or illusions or even holograms to deceive their opponents or gain an advantage. Now, these battles are not fought with traditional weapons, but rather with magical abilities and tricks that create a distorted perception of reality. Now, to me, magical abilities and tricks sound like technology to me. So with weapons referred to as the Shatagni and the Pariga, they were able to generate fire that lit up the sky, huge boulders falling from the sky, a mountain sending down arrows, clouds to make it rain, arrows that shed poison from the ground, energy pulverizing people, making animals perish. So here's a few examples of such weapons. So there's at least over 2 dozen of them, but I'm going to go over just a few of them. So the first one being the Agni Astra. So Agni's celestial weapon, when discharged, it emits flames inextinguishable through normal means. So during the Kurukshetra war, it was used to reduce entire armies of soldiers, horses, chariots, and elephants to ashes. And the Varunastra. Varuna's celestial weapon, it released torrential volumes of water, thunderstorms. This weapon is commonly mentioned as being used to counter the Agni Astra. And then the Brahmadanda, a defensive personal weapon and divine rod capable of repelling other higher energy weapons. The Vishoshana, the drying weapon, which could dry anything, an amazing counter to the Varunastra, used to make, Sail Astra, used to make heavy winds disappear and make it counter to the Astra, the wind weapon. Then we have the Samohana. Arjuna used this weapon in the Kurukshetra war against the entire Kaurava army, which caused them to collapse in a trance, becoming unconscious. Now that to me sounds very similar to the active denial system today used for crowd control. And then we have the Maheshavarastra, the power of Shiva's third eye. It shoots a fiery beam that can turn even celestial beings to ash, and it has the power to turn even the entire world to ash. So are these celestial weapons described in the Mahabharata mythology or technology? All right, so let's segue into a few of Tesla's news articles and quotes from the 1930s. So all perceptible matter comes from a primary substance or tenuity beyond conception, filling all space, the akasha or luminiferous ether, which is acted upon by the life-giving prana or creative force, calling into existence in never-ending cycles all things and phenomena. So what is the ether? In classical Greek, ether referred to the pure, bright upper air, a concept later associated with the fifth element in alchemy and early physics. It was believed to be the substance filling the entire universe beyond the terrestrial sphere. In science, ether is also denoted as a hypothetical medium through which light was thought to propagate, a concept later rejected with the development of modern physics. And at the start of the 20th century, the ether was completely removed from mainstream physics entirely. And after Einstein introduced the theory of relativity, that's when it was taken out between 1905 and 1915. So whether they're called celestial, ether, new energy, implosion, or free energy technologies, they are not supposed to exist according to the historical mainstream narrative. And yet, 100 years ago, Nikola Tesla rediscovered and demonstrated that they do, in fact, and have always existed. Okay, whatever electricity may be, it is a fact that it behaves like an incomprehensible fluid, and the Earth may be looked upon as an immense reservoir of electricity, which I thought could be distributed effectively by a properly designed electrical machine. So Tesla's new device, like bolts of Thor. So here's an article I'm going to read where Tesla says he's reaching into the infinite to snatch a bolt of lightning for the salvation of mankind. It is to be the Tesla death beam, literally a lightning bolt. It will have such a terrific energy that 1,000 invading airplanes could be sent earthward in flaming fragments within 10 heartbeats, annihilated. Submarine warfare would be made impossible by the Tesla death beam. One human being sitting in a glass tower, gently pressing a forefinger on an ivory button, could hurl a lightning bolt hundreds of miles out to sea and 200 feet below the surface to destroy in one blinding flash the lurking submarine. And then this is the news article headline in February 1935, a machine to end war. But we'll come back to this a little more towards the end. Okay, so on that article, one of my most important discoveries, terrestrial resonance, which is the foundation of wireless power transmission, and which I announced in 1899, is not even understood today. So Tesla stated, "I am part of a light, and it is my music. Light fills my six senses. I hear it, I see it, feel it, smell it, touch it, and think. Thinking of it means my sixth sense. Particles of light are written notes. A bolt of lightning can be an entire sonata." So let me just tell you a quick story the night I finished the first draft. This was back at the beginning of May. It was May 3rd. It was around 2:30 in the morning, very quiet. So as soon as I sat down to look at all the slides and review the final video edit, since it was very quiet, I could hear this rumbling. I couldn't understand what that was, so I went to the window, and sure enough, a lightning storm started to begin. Big downpour started to happen while this was going on. I couldn't believe it. And that lasted, the lightning storm pretty much lasted that entire week. And by the end of that week, all I kept thinking about was focus on lightning, focus on lightning. So it was, for me, that is proof that nature and the weather, we have a symbiotic relationship and has direct influence over us, and sometimes in very unusual but powerful ways, like music does. So for me, this is a validation too, that the human technology is the highest form of sentience or biological and free energy technology in the entire universe. That's why there is that symbiotic relationship between all of nature and us. Okay, so let's go to the first video clip which is from Danny Jones' podcast featuring the work of Jeffrey Drum. So Jeffrey Drum, he's the author of the book, The Land of Chem, an initiation into ancient Egyptian or ancient chemistry through the degrees of the Egyptian pyramids. Okay, here we go.
I had this intuition that the Great Pyramid specifically was being struck by lightning. And now we have evidence from these chemical analysis of samples from the Giza Plateau that proves that there were lightning strikes on the plateau. They found these silicate microspherules from fulgurites. So fulgurites are essentially fossilized lightning. So when lightning strikes sand, for example, it'll fuse all of this sand together and it produces silicate microspherules.
Right.
In some of the chemical analysis that was taken by the ACITA project, they found these silicate microspherules from fulgurites, which is direct evidence that the area around the Great Pyramid was being struck by lightning. They found these next to a structure called the Trial Passages, which is on the northeastern corner of the Great Pyramid. So I had this intuition back in 2017, and I always knew that lightning was the power source of the Egyptian pyramids, because you have to have a power source to drive all these chemical reactions. And I truly believe that the Egyptian pyramids and all of these ancient structures across the planet were designed to work in conjunction with the forces of nature. They were harnessing these naturally occurring phenomenon, like the telluric currents flowing through the surface of the earth, which is something that was Nikola Tesla was huge into researching telluric currents because they're extremely important in the function of our planet, storm systems. Telluric currents are directly connected to lightning strike locations. And I believe Tesla was on this.
And earthquakes.
Correct. Yeah, they're all connected. So I'm a huge proponent of the electric universe theory, and that our entire solar system is a huge electromagnetic system. So everything that's happening on the sun, the moon, the planets, and the earth are all this interconnected electrical system. And I believe this is knowledge that was possessed by this ancient civilization that we still fully don't understand, the mechanism of operation that go into how our planet work.
So if that is true, then that shows that the weather was being engineered and harnessed for beneficial purposes back during ancient times. So that's an interesting thing to contemplate. So all people everywhere should have free energy sources. Electric power is everywhere, present in unlimited quantities, and can drive the world's machinery without the need of coal, oil, gas, or any of the other common fuels. And since well over a century ago, we're still using oil, coal, and fossil fuels as the go-to energy power source. Okay, so this is images of the Giza Plateau with geologist Robert Schoch. I'm convinced that the Giza Plateau is one location where, as a result of a major solar outburst that drove plasma originating from our sun down through our atmosphere and magnetosphere to ground level, where it hit as huge lightning bolts. Vitrification, or the turning of a stone to crude glass due to extreme temperatures, can be seen extensively there. Like many electrical plasma phenomena, Lichtenberg patterns occur at scales spanning numerous orders of magnitude, from microscopic to planetary or even greater. This is just an interesting quote from Revelation 4:5-6. And out of the throne proceeded lightnings, thunderings, and voices, and before the throne there was a sea of glass, like that of crystal. Okay, so let's look at another Jeffrey Drum clip. The lightning strikes the pyramid clip. This is, hang on one second.
So let's say you have the lightning strike on top of the Great Pyramid. Through any individual vein, you have a minute, tiny fraction of that voltage being distributed through the vein. That is the secret. You don't try to capture all of it once and send it down into the Osiris shaft and blow the whole damn thing out of the ground. Tiny, tiny fractions of the voltage were being distributed for electrochemical operations. The rest of it was being distributed into the bedrock, away from the structures, which is perhaps what we're looking at here. Some of the veins going directly into components, other structures going away, distributing some of that voltage back into the bedrock.
Okay. So if many of these ancient megalithic stone structures and temples that we find across the planet, including pyramids, they're somehow all connected and were originally engineered for functional purposes as part of a planetary free energy plasma grid system, which we don't really understand today, then voltage from lightning must have been the source, as well as the main current flowing through these material components, similar to our modern version of the way voltage interacts with electrically operated circuit boards. So that is very an interesting thing. So over here, you could just take a note of the toasted marks and the scorch markings and the melted components on these modern day computers and circuit boards. And then we see the same type of effect when we look at this example of the stone component. This one is found in Bolivia. It just shows the evidence that high voltage current must have been running through it. This is an aerial view of that shot. So could this have functioned like modern day circuit boards do, as electric components, perhaps as functioning as like a step down transformer that had a dielectric breakdown? And also take note of that vein going through the ground, hitting that component, that snake temple right there. So that's also very interesting. And there's another example of a possible short-circuited component having a dielectric breakdown from Google Earth. I got that. Okay, so here it appears as if a lightning bolt struck right through this stone, leaving evidence of large veins scorching and melting, just like those trees. And then we see the same kind of melting and charring characteristics here with the statue. So what actually happened to this? And what are we looking at here? We see an obvious difference in the coloration. What could that be? We could only speculate. Same thing here. This is in Petra, so the entire mountain. So it just makes me question and look at history a little differently. Like, this could be something else that possibly could have happened here. Okay, so let me just show you a last clip of Jeffrey Drum showing us the examples of these veins from lightning strikes around the Giza Plateau and the Great Pyramid.
These naturally occurring bedrock, limestone, metal or mineral deposits go in conjunction with the idea of Lichtenberg patterns and electrical current discharge into the dielectric substrate of the Giza Plateau bedrock to these incredibly significant functional features of the Giza Plateau. So this is a great example of where you can see these veins coming from inside the core of the pyramid, moving out into the bedrock. So I don't know how well the color is going to translate on the screen here, but this one is particularly red. I mean, the nomenclature of vein is absolutely accurate because they look like veins. Red veins carrying that iron-rich mineral. Okay, here's another rather large one. Okay, so here we have paving blocks, or rather what's left of the paving stones here, this layer. And you can see this thick vein coming from underneath the paving blocks going across the bedrock. So you can see the vein here. You can see patchwork fill in. And where does this vein go? We've discussed this numerous times before on the channel. These veins of iron oxide and other metallic ore rich minerals, boom, directly into the so-called boat pit. And you can even see where the vein continues up this side and goes further in that direction.
Okay, so what are these? So what's this Lichtenberg figures that I keep hearing about? Okay, let me show you another clip that explains that.
Lichtenberg figures were named after German physicist Georg Christoph Lichtenberg, who originally discovered them. They've also been called Lichtenberg trees or trapped lightning. We create these Lichtenberg figures by shooting millions of electrons over 99% the speed of light into the top surface of an acrylic plaque. Because acrylic is such a great insulator, the electrons travel through and become trapped in the middle, forming a plane of excess negative charge. Now, at this point, the acrylic still looks unaffected, even though it has millions of electrons teeming just under the surface. At some point, the electric field strength, which can reach millions of volts, exceeds the insulating strength of the acrylic and it discharges, creating a beautifully unique Lichtenberg figure. A manual discharge can also be achieved by striking the acrylic at the desired location, using a heavily insulated tool, of course, and in an instant, portions of the polymer abruptly become electrically conductive in a process called dielectric breakdown. Networks of branching channels form, creating, you guessed it, a Lichtenberg figure. The branching pattern looks similar at various scales of magnification, suggesting that Lichtenberg figures might be mathematically described through fractal geometry. And similar fractal patterns are prevalent throughout nature, as seen in aerial views of rivers and their tributaries, branching tree limbs, snow and ice, your body's circulatory system, and, of course, in lightning. We personally think this is a fun way of demonstrating the power of electrons.
Okay. So, so when I think of the Earth as this massive sacred circuit, like a giant battery or resonator of current and huge electrical component, I imagine this enormous plasma discharge hitting the Earth in the form of lightning, distributing Lichtenberg figures all over the planet. Causing floods, tsunamis, earthquakes, and perhaps even causing the Earth to tilt 23.5 degrees off its axis. That's possible. So let's look at some Google Earth images now. So could these channels be forged as a result of massive bolts of lightning hitting the surface and traveling under the sea floor, forging a new path and direction for the water to flow? So just take note of all the large veins and branches that I'm going to be showing you. Okay, so this particular location where these veins go in several directions are from underneath the water level, which is very interesting. And also Tesla said that the Earth could be split open like an apple by applying the principle of mechanical resonance. So let's look at them a little bit closer. You can see the evidence of these branch-like veins, and the way they spread all across from under the seafloor and then continue onto the land itself. And these are all over the planet. I'm going to show you a little bit more examples, but look how huge this one is. And it just directly cuts right through the land itself, just like in that video that I just showed you of the Lichtenberg patterns where they were doing it on the piece of wood. This is possible. And here's more examples, more channels. And there's just a little comparison image. And it's they're displaying the same features and characteristics like these branches, Okay, so more evidence. There's a comparison of that. It looks very similar to that piece of wood. And this is a planetary scale, just like Robert Schoch was talking about, that it's different sizes, planetary scale, smaller and larger. So this is more of that. And this is Egypt. So I'm just going to go through a bunch of them, but you could take a look if you go to Google Earth. It's pretty much on all continents, all over the planet, and you can find them everywhere. They are very, very interesting. This one is in Iceland, Israel. And Israel and Egypt area, the anomalies there of these patterns is incredible. It's like this when I zoom in, it's like, wow. And you could also see under the sea floor over here, these more evidence of branches. This is Italy, France, Spain area. Okay, so let's just go through these really quick. South America. And interestingly enough, when I've recently, back in March of this year, I flew over to the East Coast. And while I was on the plane looking outside, I think we were over Colorado, Utah area, I took this footage, which I couldn't believe. Could this have been during that time when giants roamed the earth? You know, it makes me wonder about that because they're so large. It just kind of makes sense to me. So here's another example of a Lichtenberg pattern within the stone of Petra in Jordan. Very interesting. Okay, so are we looking at possible evidence from the time of the ancient war of succession as told by the epic Mahabharata, or perhaps even earlier? So where else on this planet can we find, you know, other evidence possibly resulting from such large scale electric events? Like are great cataclysms, the deluge, the biblical flood, the fallen light of Atlantis a direct result of planetary scale electric related events? Okay. Oh, let me show you this real quick. I just want to show you this short clip with the characteristics of melting objects and what it looks like before I show you that next slide. It's going to segue nicely into the next section. Okay, so the quote from Psalm 975, the mountains melt like wax before the Lord of the earth. So take notice of all the ancient melted buildings and structures we find all over the planet. Okay, so I'm going to show you just a bunch of images with features and characteristics that resemble melted stone material. Okay, so I'm just going to go through them and point them out. That's why I showed you that video, because to me, these buildings look like they were melted by some electric event or some event in the distant past, because the characteristics of melting, it's obvious. It appears everywhere, all over these structures. This is in Cappadocia. So, you know, you have to look closely and study these images sometimes, and it will tell you a whole story, a new story of what our ancient past might have been like. You know, because I see all of these structures as buildings that were created and they were finished, and something came along and made them look like that. So it's like really putting on different glasses, or a different viewing this in a different light, you know. And I don't believe for a second that what we're looking at here is just millions of years of natural geological formations. Because you can see within these structures, you notice that there's some kind of structure or a building that existed underneath prior to what must have been a great melting event or cataclysm, you know, in the distant past. And you can see archways and doorways, and some are more obvious than others. Like, look at this one. You could totally see it looks like the same characteristics as the way something melts.
Hey, so just a quick time check, brother. We have about 12 minutes.
12 minutes. Okay. Thanks, man. Appreciate that. Okay, so I'm just going to run through these because I got to get to that last video, which is about 8 minutes. Okay, so it's very, very interesting. Just notice the characteristics. And melting over here. These folds are not natural characteristics of stone. Okay, boom. And this one is very obvious. Take note of the charring evidence all over on the top. This was a finished building, and then boom, something happened. Okay, I'm just going to run through it really quick. I have so many images, I can spend like a whole day on each one. All right, again, notice the fold right there. That kind of gives it away in my mind. This one is an obvious one. This entire city, you know, ancient structure destroyed. What could have caused that? Okay. Okay, so I'm just going to run through it so I can get to the end. Okay. All right, so let me just go over a little bit of melted bricks at Fort Zverev in Russia. So in 1970, a devastating fire broke out that ravaged several weeks. An inferno was so hot that it melted the bricks, which dripped down like stalactites. And it is not known what kind of material fueled the fire. In many household fires, even a strong brick does not melt. This requires temperatures not less than 3,200 degrees Fahrenheit. A large gasoline fire will produce temperatures of about 2012 degrees Fahrenheit. And you can notice the charring, same evidence here. And I'll just quickly get to this image, which shows them, in that melting characteristic. Okay, so what does all of this ancient stuff have to do with what's happening on the planet today, and why is it important now? If we don't learn from the past, then we're bound to repeat it. So this photo of me on the left with my brother was taken around 1986. We came to the US, to New York at JFK 1984. And when I came out of the airport, I was looking around. I was like, where are those buildings? Those skyscrapers. That's the first thing I asked. I'll never forget that. Okay, so today's version of the battle of illusions, viruses, holographic planes, just another cycle repeating itself. The Atman echoes from the ashes of a forgotten past to let's remember now who we are. Let's remember ourselves again. We are the new Atlantis rising. Okay, so we're just going to go over a few Tesla details, and then I'm going to show you that final video, okay? So what's the Tesla's death beam, aka particle beam, all about? Okay, so the death beam, he said, is based on an entirely new principle of physics that no one has ever dreamed about. Okay, it's a New York Times article in 1934 describing the weapon. So it will be invisible and will leave no trace, no marks behind it beyond its evidence of destruction. An army of 1 million dead, annihilated in an instant, he said, would not reveal even under the most powerful microscope just what catastrophe had caused its destruction. The voltages to be employed in propelling the death beam to their objective will attain the lightning-like potential of 50 million volts. With this enormous voltage, hitherto unattained by man-made means, microscopic particles of matter will be catapulted on their mission of defensive destruction. And then over here, we all know what we heard about the Tesla's earthquake machine, and also the particle beam weapon says it could destroy skyscrapers. Okay, so the noted inventor said his ray will melt plane motors at 250 miles range. Okay, so here's the final video.
We shall urge proposals extending the United Nations Charter to the limits of man's exploration in the universe, reserving outer space for peaceful use, prohibiting weapons of mass destruction in space or on celestial bodies, and opening the mysteries and benefits of space to every nation. We shall propose further cooperative efforts between all the nations in weather prediction and eventually in weather control.
We stand at the dawn of an entirely new age. By all evidence, man has in his hands the method of disrupting the molecular basis of matter. We have these coins from the World Trade Center. People like to say they're melted together. Here's the piece of wood embedded in the aluminum from John Hutchison's work without elevated temperature.
David Hampshire, the photographer, one of the photographers for the New York Daily News, he reported being levitated and he was carried a block.
As I hit the corner of Liberty Street, it was almost being picked up by a tornado, almost being picked up by a wave. It was like being picked up by the black cloud. That black cloud had substance. It was like night, but it had a solid feel to it. It was like gravel, and just picked me up and tossed me about a block.
You also have cars, some of them nearby were also inverted, turned upside down. So again, these accounts, these events, and this evidence must be accounted for.
These fires are far from natural, far from normal, and that it was in fact caused by directed energy weapons, and spread awareness that this really is a serious thing that is occurring and has happened in the past. If you guys remember 9/11, there was a 110-story building that completely turned into dust, leaving a rubble pile less than 2 stories high, which is absolutely impossible unless those buildings were completely dustified using scalar wave technology, which is also what we call directed energy weapons.
It's as though there's a pencil line in space around which material at the same radius is dustified.
I want people to know it for themselves. I want people to understand what this is.
We've got to start looking at this whole situation a lot differently than we have up until now.
Free your mind. We're talking about the fact that most people see what they expect to see, what they want to see, what they've been told to see, what conventional wisdom tells them to see, not what is right in front of them in its pristine condition.
They did no investigations today that have determined a cause. Another thing is, where's the debris? If these were hurricane force winds, why is everything everywhere just the streets are pristine? You drive down, there's just ash. Hurricane force winds would blow so many things over. The only thing I've ever seen overturned in this is cars, and they have holes in them.
I think our society is run by insane people for insane objectives. If anybody can put on paper what our government and the American government, etc., and the Russian, Chinese, what they are actually trying to do, and what they think they're doing, I'd be very pleased to know what they think they're doing. I think they're all insane, but I'm liable to be put away as insane for expressing that. That's what's insane about it.
Here was these huge buildings that turned to dust in midair right in front of our faces on TV. Why did so few people see that? Because they were told to see a collapse, maybe?
It's my understanding that Nikola Tesla, 100 years ago, knew about this and knew that it could provide free energy to the world. But he also knew it could fall into the wrong hands and be used for evil purposes. So he didn't release it.
Some say that all the patents and all the knowledge has disappeared.
The risk that Tesla foresaw has been demonstrated.
The good news in this, been there, done that. It's already been used for evil purposes. So why not use it for good? The risk is not there anymore.
This is the moment for our civilization to claim that technology and find it and bring it out.
If half the world read my book, you bet everything would change. It would undermine the power structure in all ways.
If that is known wide enough, everyone can develop it out in the open.
Stop listening to the physicists and scientists who come out and tell us point blank in an authoritative manner that free energy physics and free energy technology is impossible.
Just open your eyes and look. There's no denying free energy technology exists.
We shall urge.
All right, there you have it.
Zsolt, thank you, brother. Thank you for that presentation.
Thank you.
I just love it so much. I already told you when we did the interview and I saw this, but just that full circle awareness and how we can use this energy. And it also kind of shows how all these things are neutral. It all depends on the level of consciousness is how it's used. Right?
Exactly, but it needs to be brought out into the light so people can see it, so we can move past it. Because if we're, moving forward based on lies and manipulation, and we don't know what is actually going on, we're going to continue to walk down that path where we don't know what's happening. So
yeah,
it's good to be informed and to be aware and put this in front of people, even though it's such a very sensitive subject. It involves many different aspects of humanity, which is dark, to say it bluntly, and horrible, but I felt like I had to go down this path, and I had to put all this stuff together and present it to people so they can see it. Because when you actually look at it, then it becomes very obvious. But if you're not looking at it, then you're going to continue to assume that it's something else going on. So it's good for self-awareness and empowerment, which is what it's really about, self-empowerment.
Yeah, exactly. And it is coming out. Even though there were conspiracies around these things, the Maui Pacific Palisades, what they call conspiracies, and then all of a sudden got swept under the rug. Actually, the Pacific Palisades, it just came out recently that there's evidence to suggest that it wasn't caused by natural occurrences, and that it wasn't I think they said the smart meters there too, but there's all this there's this trail of money that goes to insurance companies and also goes to corrupt corporations in the city. And there's this news station called Breaking Points that is on YouTube, and they're kind of like, a lot of mainstream people watch it, but it's people that left the mainstream media. And they did this whole thing on there where they interviewed this guy who lost his home, and he was tracking what happened. And they realized that this fire had actually started 3 days prior, and it wasn't from natural occurrences. And they said they contained that fire, but they never did it. They never contained it. And then it ended up spreading throughout the town. Plus, we have the directed energy weapon images and all those things as well. So I think a lot of this stuff is coming out, man, even when it comes to what happened during COVID, all the corruption and stuff behind that too. It's just inevitable that it's going to come out. They're still holding on for dear life, because if you really know the level of corruption and how the lack of consideration for life that they have, it's gonna make a lot of people very angry. Right.
Yeah, it totally just squashes the potential of humanity, because the whole point of creating, like in ancient times, that kind of a world where we work together in unity and cooperation, like mirroring nature, then the potential rises, and that's when we create amazing things. But until then, the suppression just, brings everything to crap.
Yeah. Well, brother, thank you so much for being here, man. And your presentation is amazing. Visuals are great. And I love how you connect ancient history with everything that's modern, because it's just a continuation of that, right? So I appreciate you, brother. And one more time, let everybody know where they can find out more about you.
Well, I invite everybody to visit ptappictures.com and check out the Expedition 0 Point series and consider joining our mission by supporting our community membership platform. We have the opportunity, to bring all these discussions and continue this important work, because there's not a lot of people who are discussing it or addressing these issues that affect all of us today. But together, I feel like we can change that. So thanks so much. I appreciate you guys listening, and let's move forward.
Let's do it, bro. Love you, man. We'll talk soon.
Love you too, brother. Thanks you.
You're
Appreciate
welcome. Bye. All right, everybody. Deep breath in, deep breath. Let's do a little stretch, huh? We're at almost 8 hours here for today. I've been sitting here living off cacao all day.